This is your city. There are thousands of empty apartments in it right now. You can't afford to rent one. And here's the part nobody in power wants to say out loud. These two facts are connected. Your government knows about the empty homes. Your government knows about the housing crisis. They just never talk about them in the same sentence. Here's how it actually works. Every major city in the world has this problem. Dublin, 8,000 empty properties, 14,000 people in emergency housing, at the same time, in the same city. Tokyo suburbs, 1 in 7 homes completely abandoned, owners paying taxes just to keep them standing because tearing them down costs more. China, 700 million square meters of unsold apartments, enough to house the entire population of Europe, sitting empty. Spain, over 3 million vacant properties after the 2008 crash. Rents in Madrid up 40% since 2019. And in Canada, a young family in Toronto spends over 65% of their income on rent. 3 kilometers away, 120 apartments have been sitting empty for over 18 months. This isn't a coincidence. This is how the market works. And once you understand the mechanics, you can't unsee it. Why homes stay empty? Let's start with the obvious question. Why would anyone own a home and choose not to rent it out? The answer is simple. Because sometimes it's more profitable not to. Here's how the math works. Imagine you bought an apartment as an investment. Every year that apartment goes up in value. 10, 15, maybe 20%. Now you could rent it out. But renting means tenants. Tenants mean wear and tear. Tenants mean legal obligations. Tenants mean paying income tax on what you earn. Or you could just wait. Let the value go up. Sell in 5 years. Pay a lower capital gains tax. And pocket the difference. No tenants, no maintenance, no headaches. This isn't greed. This is basic financial logic. And millions of property owners around the world are doing exactly this calculation right now. But it gets more complicated. In many countries, the tax system was literally designed to reward this behavior. Croatia is a perfect example. Until 2024, short-term vacation rentals were taxed at a lower rate than long-term leases. So landlords converted apartments into tourist lets. Locals got priced out of their own cities. And the government was confused about why housing became unaffordable. In London and Vancouver, overseas investors buy apartments through offshore companies. Shell entities registered in Cyprus, in Panama. Nobody knows who actually owns the building. Nobody can chase them for empty home taxes. The apartment sits dark. The rent in the neighborhood goes up. And then there are the developers. A builder finishes a block of apartments. But selling now means selling at today's prices. If they wait 6 months, prices might rise another 5%. So they hold. One developer holding isn't a problem. But when this logic applies to hundreds of developers across dozens of cities at the same time, the combined effect starts to look like a housing crisis. The political paradox. Here's where it gets interesting. Government officials know all of this. In 2023, the U.S. Secretary for Housing said, "We are facing the most serious gap between housing supply and need in 50 years." That same year in Spain, the housing minister acknowledged that renting had become unaffordable for 40% of people under 35. Ireland's housing minister called the market broken for ordinary families. These are real statements from real officials. But here's what none of them said. None of them stood up and said, "We have a housing crisis, and we have hundreds of thousands of empty homes, and these two things are the same problem." Because saying that would mean forcing owners to do something with their assets. And that is politically very difficult. So governments do something clever. They talk about the affordability problem. Then they talk about the vacancy problem, separately, in different meetings, with different ministers, as if they have nothing to do with each other. The result? Policies that don't touch the root cause. Vancouver introduced an empty homes tax in 2017. Vacancy dropped 20%. Rents kept going up. Canada introduced a national vacancy tax. The Parliamentary Budget Office calculated it would raise less than $100 million a year. Paris has a vacancy tax. London lets councils charge triple council tax on long-term empty properties. All of these measures exist. None of them have solved the problem, because a small tax on a fast-growing asset is not a reason to change behavior. If your apartment goes up in value by 15% a year, and the government charges you 2% for leaving it empty, you're still winning. What this means for you. You're not imagining it. Housing in most major cities has stopped being primarily a place to live and started being primarily a financial asset. And financial assets behave differently than goods on a market. When tomatoes get expensive, farmers grow more tomatoes. Supply goes up. Price comes down. When housing gets expensive, investors buy more housing. Supply stays locked up. Price goes up more. This is why building new homes often doesn't solve the problem either. New homes get bought by investors, and some of those homes join the stock of empty properties waiting for the right moment to sell. The Dublin family on the waiting list, the Toronto couple spending 2/3 of their income on rent, the young person in Madrid who can't afford to move out. They're not losing to bad luck. They're losing to a system where the rules make it more profitable to keep housing empty than to let people live in it. In 2024, the Chinese government ordered local authorities to start buying unsold apartments from developers and converting them into social housing. It wasn't charity. It was damage control for an economy where too much empty housing had become a systemic financial risk. In Ireland, the government introduced grants of up to €50,000 for bringing empty homes back into use. And in Vienna, a city that has managed to keep housing affordable for decades, 60% of residents live in publicly subsidized housing. Not because the market failed there, because the city decided housing wasn't only a market. That's not a perfect solution for every city, but it shows that different rules produce different outcomes. Pure market, US, UK, highest vacancy plus highest rents. Partial intervention, Spain, Ireland, mixed results. Strong public housing, Vienna, Singapore, stable rents. These are the early signs that something is shifting. But here's the honest truth. As long as housing is treated as an investment first and a place to live second, the empty apartment down the street will stay empty, and the housing crisis will stay exactly where it is. Asset grows plus 15% per year. Empty home tax, minus 2%. Net gain, still plus 13%. Behavior, no reason to rent it out. That's how it actually works. If your rent went up this year while buildings in your neighborhood stood empty, subscribe. Because next week, we're going further.